Hey guys, this is Geo Neon Reviews, and today it's time to take a look at the new album by Ariana Grande. It's called Thank You Next. I can't lie, the incredibly rushed release of this album seemed to get frustrates me beyond belief. And really only goes to definitively prove that the record label only seeks to profit off the drama surrounding the artist more than anything else. Instead of giving Ariana Grande some time off, some time to reflect on a lot of the shit she's been through, perhaps away from the constant pressures of the music industry, instead of that, 6 months after her previous album Sweetener came out, we have a new album from Ariana Grande. This one's called Thank You Next. And considering how heavily compromised that previous album was, I did not expect this to be good at all, considering it was clearly, blatantly being rushed out to capitalize on a lot of the drama surrounding Pete Davidson and that breakup. And as a result, from all of that hype around it, it was able to spawn 2 #1 singles in the run-up to its released, the title track Thank You Next and 7 Rings. But honestly, I don't even know why I tried to be surprised. After the unfortunate death of her ex-boyfriend Mac Miller due to a tragic drug overdose, and then, as I mentioned, the breakup with Pete Davidson, you could almost hear the cogs turning as the pop music machine began to churn out a song like Thank You Next in order to capitalize on all of it. And that was all just 2 months after Sweetener dropped. And that brings up another potential issue with this whole release cycle that's going on. When new singles are being released so close to each other and so close to the previous album, you run into issues that could lead to you oversaturating the market, where each single that you've got on the charts is compromising the success of the other. And even though I do think Thank You Next is a pretty decent song, even if the hook does scream of girlish immaturity in the way that it's written, 7 Rings sounds hardly finished, and hence I expected the rest of the album to fall into very much that category given that rush release cycle that I've just talked about. And so how is the album? How is Thank You Next by Ariana Grande? Unfortunately, this album is not good at all. Not even the benefit of lowered expectations on my part can unfortunately save it. A lot of the girlish immaturity that I didn't like on that lead single and title track has trickled into a lot of the writing on this album, and not only that, the production once again, just like on Sweetener, heavily compromises it, and we'll get into why that is in a second. And I will start by saying this: if you want this album to be one that's going to give Ariana Grande the proper room to express herself, tap into that really huge range that she's got going for her, then you're mostly probably not going to be all that impressed by this album. There's certainly no song comparable to No Tears Left to Cry or Breathe In, for example, from Sweetener, in terms of the song giving her the ability to properly emote and tap into that tremendous range. Imagine is probably the only song that really gives her that room, but still, it leaves me cold because there's just not enough to it melodically for it to be memorable outside of some waves of hazy synths. It's just not really got enough going for it to really stick in my head. And that's the one fundamental issue with this album that plagues it from start to finish. The melodic compositions feeling pretty half-formed, pretty shapeless. And this is undoubtedly where the rushed rollout shows most. The melodies either totally bore me in their droning monotony like on Needy and NASA, are made up mostly by ghostly waves of atmospheric synths on Imagine and Ghostin, or feel completely unfinished and frail like on 7 Rings and especially Fake Smile, with the grating, muffled melody on In My Head probably being the biggest, most blatant production blunder on this album, although those pitch-shifted vocals tacked on to the back end of Bad Idea, that's not far behind. Kind of annoying, because I do generally like that song. I like the guitar, it's got a good melody behind it, unlike most of this album. I certainly can't say the same about Break Up With Your Girlfriend, I'm Bored, the closing track here. That's got this odd clicky hi-hat sound that cultivates an oddly creepy atmosphere that really clearly does not work for what Ariana Grande was going for in the songwriting. But generally bizarre, I suppose, production choices aside, I can certainly acknowledge there are a few moments where the production does indeed come together. The sharp horns on Bloodline actually have some real punch to them, making that song certainly melodically the biggest standout on the album. And the more melodically defined and catchy title track is pretty agreeable, and the waves of ghostly synths that build up on Ghostin actually sounds pretty amazing, certainly better than a similar atmosphere that was tried earlier on the album on Imagine. Almost has somewhat of a haunting atmosphere. But unfortunately, this is where we need to talk about the songwriting, and this is where I'm most disappointed. Take Thank You Next, the title track, where the first verse is framed as a genuine, mature response to all of the breakups that she's been through. But that maturity is utterly then thrown out the window on the chorus, where she says, I'm so fucking grateful for my ex, and it just comes across really snarky, girlish, immature. Fake Smile suffers from the same kind of girlish arrogance in the framing. It could have worked, as Ariana talks about seeing a lot of people around her seeming so fake and faking emotions when she knows that even though she's been through some shit, she was distinctly herself in all of that. She never faked any emotions. Again, it could have worked if you didn't default to just girlish whining on the hook with the line, "fuck her fake smile." Even the album's standout Bloodline has an uncomfortable sense of arrogance in the way that Ariana goes about rejecting the guy that just feels totally off. NASA has a totally different problem with the crazy hyperbole that Ariana throws out with all of her metaphors about space and NASA that honestly just get out of control at this point. But Bad Idea might be the most frustrating song here, with Ariana looking to hook up with someone to get over a lot of the stuff that she's just been through. But the fact that it's framed as a bad idea, and the fact that that's the primary focus of the song, it's in the title, makes it feel like Ariana herself might not even be willing to take that next step in getting over her exes. But it's the closing track, "Break Up With Your Girlfriend, I'm Bored," that I think pretty much just sums everything up, to be honest. Especially in terms of the very immature, arrogant nature of the songwriting on this album. The song is basically a rehash of what Taylor Swift done on Reputation with Gorgeous, only this time seemingly even more arrogant, as Ariana acknowledges the fact that she has the power to make guys cheat on their girlfriends, but only interested in abusing that power more than anything else, just plainly because she's bored. And you know what? I think that just about sums it up. This is a pop star who's bored. A record labels were rushing out an album knowing that even if it's pretty bad, it will still sell a ton of units and break streaming records regardless. And a group of songwriters doing the absolute definition of phoning it in. This certainly does not look good for Ariana Grande going forward, and I would say that this is even more of an essential time for the record label to give her some time off between albums, but considering she's going on tour in March for most of the year, yeah, I really feel sorry for her right about now.